Hi, this is Kate Meese. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm an Associate Director at the Local Government Commission. The topic of this webinar is green jobs and energy efficiency. We chose this topic because poll after poll has shown that the economy and jobs currently top the list of concerns for local governments and the public at large. Given this fact, the question for us is how can local governments address these concerns in a way that also contributes to energy and climate change goals? The good news is that addressing these issues can go hand in hand. Studies show that California's green economy has been growing at a faster rate than the economy as a whole, and that energy efficiency accounted for a large number of these jobs, vastly exceeding the average green job growth. State regulations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and energy use will likely continue to drive demand for energy sector services. The goal of this webinar is to help local governments position themselves to take advantage of these opportunities and create green jobs in their communities. This is the 7th of 15 webinars we will be hosting over the next 3 years through the Statewide Energy Efficiency Collaborative, which is a partnership between LGC, ICLEI, the Institute for Local Government, and the 4 investor-owned utilities. The partnership was established in the 2009 CPUC decision to help cities and counties reduce greenhouse gas emissions and save energy. A little bit about the webinar logistics before we get started. Due to the large number of participants, everyone will be muted for the duration of the webinar. If you have questions at any time during the webinar, please type them in the question box on the control panel window with the name of the speaker your question is intended for and click the send button. If you are having technical difficulties, write IT in the question box, followed by the problem you are experiencing. We'll be trying to answer as many questions as possible through the chat function during the presentations. We'll summarize the remaining questions for the speakers during the question and answer portion at the end of each panel. The presentations from this webinar are available at lgc.org/seek/webinars. We'll also be adding a recording of the webinar once it is available. When the webinar concludes, you will be asked to complete a survey. Please take 5 minutes to provide us with input, which will help us to improve our future webinars. We'll start out with an overview of the current landscape and opportunities for green jobs within the energy efficiency sector, followed by regional case studies highlighting innovative strategies to promote green jobs and energy efficiency. With that, I will introduce our first speaker, Kat Daniel, and then turn it over to her to get the webinar started. Kat recently joined Green for All as the community's practice program manager. She brings experience in working with governments and nonprofit organizations to design and implement economic and community development strategies. She is skilled in data and policy analysis, defining and measuring outcomes, as well as facilitating public-private partnerships to accomplish community goals.
Thanks, Kate. This is
muted.
I'm the Communities of Practice Program Manager at Green for All, and Kate and Jenny asked me onto the webinar today to give an overview of green jobs in California. So I'm going to start with that generally, but then spend most of the presentation on jobs within the energy efficiency sector specifically, as that's what this group is convened around. I wanted to start with just a little bit of background information. Green for All is a national nonprofit organization that is dedicated to building and supporting an inclusive green economy that is strong enough to lift people out of poverty. And so the topic of green jobs across the nation, how they're growing and their ability to employ workers that have been left out of economic development initiatives in the past is very near and dear to our hearts. So I'm going to go to the first slide and talk about what are green jobs. So as most of the people on this webinar probably know, different entities define green jobs differently. Green for All defines green jobs as any job in which, as part of the product or the services produced, ecological damage to the earth is prevented or improved. So as an organization, we're very focused on an economy in which all jobs meet this definition, so that the current paradigm of environmental sustainability at odds with economic growth is really transformed so that it becomes a positive feedback cycle in which the work that is generated to protect and improve our environment sustains the economic livelihood of our workers. So we think that that kind of transformation will actually spur a new era of innovation and economic investment that has the potential to restart our economy and to provide employment for workers at all levels, including new opportunities for entry-level workers and those that have barriers to employment that have been hit hardest by the current state of the economy, either because they've lost their jobs or because they're seeing a decrease in the wages that they can garner through their employment. So as such, my presentation is going to focus on those jobs which have been termed green-collar jobs. So by any definition, green jobs comprise a range of sectors, positions, and skills. It can range from at the high-end green consultants and engineers and scientists that are working on better and less resource-intensive ways of doing things, all the way to public transit operators and construction workers in the green economy. So because we are focused on green-collar jobs specifically, I wanted to include a couple of examples of that. Those can include small-scale urban manufacturing or manufacturing of green products, recyclers and waste management technicians, land conservation and environmental remediation workers, as well as construction jobs that are working within deconstruction sectors, green infrastructure installation, and green building, and of course, working in installing and manufacturing of energy efficiency. So if we can go to the next slide, I can give a pretty broad overview of green jobs in California. So because of the differing definitions of what a green job is, there is some variance in how green jobs are measured. But estimates just placed 2.7 million green jobs in the U.S. That's about 2% of the U.S. industry, and over 318,000 of those jobs are in California, which is about 2% of the California economy. Local estimates range, local estimates for the state of California range between 2 and 4% of the jobs in the state being green jobs. Most hover around 3.4% of the workforce engaged in a green job, and about 8% of employers report that some number of their employees are involved in green jobs and activities, and oftentimes that can just be greening the processes that those employers are involved in the operations of the business. So while the green economy is still a pretty nascent sector, 2 to 4% is pretty small. By most reports, the green industries are growing faster than others. They're attracting more investment than other sectors, and they're employing more workers per establishment and per dollar invested than our non-green industries. So to give a couple of numbers around that, the green jobs in California are estimated to have expanded about 56% since 1995, and that's compared with about 18% of total state employment growth. Just in 2009, the green jobs increased 3%, compared for less than 1% for the state as a whole. And then when we're looking at other variables such as sales, the same kind of trends show. Green economy sales have increased 79% between 1990 and 2008, compared with 47% increase in sales for the state. And then if you are looking at venture capital and investment in the green sector. There's also been quite a big surge recently between 2005 and 2008 in VC investments from basically nothing to about 7% of total VC investments going towards green and clean economies. So there's not really a clear projection for what the California growth is going to be. That's going to be dependent on a lot of variables, but the indicators seem to show that this is a sector that's growing, that is attracting investment, and seems to favor the propagation of the sector. It's also important because of economic development goals to look at who gets green jobs and whether those jobs are good jobs and can actually sustain economic development and sort of family supporting wages and the livelihood of the workers. So in California, about 64% of green jobs are estimated to be green collar jobs, indicating that they require no more than a high school level of education, and that they pay mid-level wages. And median wages in the green industries are about 13% higher than the median wages in the rest of in traditional industries. So in terms of economic development goals, it seems like green jobs in general are a good investment for making. And so when we're digging a little bit into detail in the energy efficiency sector, we can go on to the next slide. The energy efficiency sector is one of the largest sectors in California at this time. It employs approximately 20,000 workers, which makes it sort of between the fourth and the sixth largest sector in the green economy in California, depending on the source. And broken out by California regions, energy efficiency makes up the third to the sixth largest sector. So jobs in energy efficiency are most concentrated in the San Francisco Bay Area and as well as Los Angeles, Orange County, and Sacramento. In San Francisco and in Los Angeles, there's about 5,000 jobs, respectively, and in Orange County and Sacramento, there's about 2,000 jobs in energy efficiency in those regions. In the rest of the regions in California, it's the energy efficiency sector is about the fifth or the sixth largest sector in the green economy, and it seems like there could be some room for development and for growth of the sector in those regions particularly. So as far as how energy efficiency affects other sectors in the green economy, the green manufacturing jobs are about 26% of the green economy in California, and half of that number is split between energy efficiency and renewable energy. According to, and I bring that point up because it's important to realize that energy efficiency is not just construction services and installation services. It's actually, there's quite a bit going into manufacturing of energy efficiency products as well, which demand increases as the amount of installation for energy efficiency goes up. So according to Next 10, when you take the energy efficiency sector as a whole, manufacturing of energy efficiency products is about 45% of the work, and then services and installation make up another 45% of the work. And then the remaining 10% is split among suppliers, sales, research and development, and public education. So that's a look at the energy efficiency sector. Those jobs, or the jobs in that sector, have grown even more than 56% since 1995, which shows quite a bit of growth in this sector. And then in terms of future projections, within California, about 52,000 jobs are expected in energy efficiency by 2020. And those are jobs directly related to the installation of energy efficiency upgrades. Another 160,000 jobs are split between indirect jobs, which includes the manufacturing of energy efficiency products, as well as induced jobs, which have little to do with energy efficiency specifically, but are more a result of workers engaged in energy efficiency spending their wages in other sectors. So the multiplier effect, really. But whether you're looking at the direct numbers or the total, it's a huge amount of growth. It's over 100%. And that growth is spurred by a number of factors, which includes a really significant investment of $11 billion invested in energy efficiency programs between now and then, between now and 2020, as well as a mandate for the California Energy Commission to conduct a needs assessment and create a strategy for retrofitting all of the buildings in the state. And again, when looking at who gets these jobs and if they are good jobs for stimulating economic development, the jobs are primarily in the construction industry and the manufacturing industry, and so they're open to workers that don't necessarily have high education levels and are considered at least semi-skilled, so that they do tend to pay mid-level wages. The ability for energy efficiency sector jobs to deliver on economic development goals that are associated with green jobs does need to be protected and encouraged so that the quality of these jobs are protected. So if we want to go to the next slide, where we really can talk about how to grow and how to make sure that the energy efficiency sector realizes its full potential and achieves that economic development growth. It's important that the growth in this sector is supported. So Green for All is quite focused on this and really focuses on sort of a two-pronged approach to growing the overall number of jobs in the energy efficiency sector. So the first sort of approach is just generating demand and making sure that there is a viable market for energy efficiency in which energy efficiency products are valued and sought out by consumers. And there's a couple of strategies for achieving that goal. But the second goal then is to increase the inclusivity of the market so that once that demand is generated, there are tools and mechanisms that ensure that consumers can invest and can access those energy efficiency upgrades. So within each of those two goals, there are different strategies that can be put into place. Obviously, policy is a huge driver within both of them. Anything, whether it be a carrot or a stick, that increases the number of buildings that are pursuing energy efficiency upgrades will help grow demand. So that can range from climate legislation that requires reduced emissions to energy efficiency and green building standards, both of which sort of require that people invest in energy efficiency, to legislation that promotes point-of-sale transactions that can actually create a monetary value that customers and homeowners recognize and will invest in order to appreciate their homes. Consumer education that increases the understanding within the consumer market and their interest in energy efficiency so that it does become something that people are aware of and value is going to be huge. Right now, about 42% of businesses in California report that they practice efficiency and conservation in their operations, but few of those have actually made investments in energy efficiency upgrades to help reduce their energy consumption, and even fewer homeowners have done so. Less than 1% of the housing market has been retrofitted in the state. And initiatives are underway to increase the understanding and demand for energy efficiency. So Energy Upgrade California has invested heavily in making information available to anyone that's interested and piloting demand generation strategies in different communities. But we're going to need to really put quite a few resources into identifying what messaging strategies are most effective, and then invest in public education campaigns and scalable demand generation initiatives that put the findings of that research into action. And then, of course, public-private partnerships are going to be essential in all areas. Energy efficiency can't rely purely on government subsidy and action. So by mobilizing the private sector so that we can gain traction for a sustainable market, it has the potential to grow the market much more rapidly and to sustain that market into the long term. So public policy and investment should look to facilitate the entry of the private market into the energy efficiency sector. There are great partners in this sector, the real estate community, the contractor community, financial institutions, which I'll get into when I'm talking about the inclusivity of the market, but working with those private players that can that do have an investment and seeing this market grow, as well as expertise in creating an effective message and communicating that message to consumers, are great partners. And so then towards increasing the inclusivity of the market, there is definitely a disconnect between the cost of energy efficiency upgrades and demand. So once demand is generated, even if people are interested in these upgrades, they might not be able to invest or to pay the upfront costs of those initiatives. And so it's important to create tools that allow people to access these improvements in a way that fits within the realities of their financial situation. So in the policy world, pursuing on-bill repayment mechanisms and PACE-like programs really helps to allow building and homeowners to invest in energy efficiency in a way that that doesn't create an undue financial burden. And then also really looking into into cracking the code for multifamily buildings. It's been a market that's been hard to serve. So looking into policy initiatives that help to overcome the split incentive that landlords face, in which they put forth the money for the retrofit or for the upgrade of the building, but then the tenants benefit by lower bills. So looking into policy initiatives that can overcome that split incentive, and then working with the more complicated sort of financial structure of multifamily buildings can really help to address energy efficiency upgrades in those buildings. So Green for All is pursuing a model right now to work within the affordable multifamily structure, but I think that that's an area that bears a lot of focus right now. And then towards public investment, specifically public investment that seeds financial products that can leverage private capital to deliver energy efficiency to a greater portion of the consumer market. So this has been done in a lot of communities through creating loan loss reserves or loan guarantees that help financial institutions make credit available for new products that they're a little hesitant to roll out, and to serving low and moderate income consumers that don't meet the highest underwriting criteria, so that those people can obtain financial products and lines of credit for energy efficiency. And then revolving loan funds are another way that governments can invest in energy efficiency. So I think particularly within California, the ratepayer and public benefit charges, it would be interesting to look into leveraging those, significant pool of funds to help leverage private investment in energy efficiency. And that's on the demand side, but then on the supply side, really looking into investments for increasing the capacity for contractors so that they can better enter the energy efficiency market by investing in extending lines of credit for their capital investments and sort of ways that they can enter the sector smoothly and establish themselves without running into serious cash flow problems. And again, the idea of public-private partnerships is sort of pivotal to making sure that this does become a market that can sustain itself into the future because a viable market is created. So those are sort of some of the initiatives that Green for All is looking into as far as how to increase demand and inclusivity in order to increase the amount of energy efficiency work and thus the number of energy efficiency jobs that are created. And then if we go to the last slide, we really want to also ensure that the green jobs that are within the energy efficiency sector deliver on those economic development promises that green-collar jobs have been held up to, and provide a level of quality of service that can reinforce the demand for energy efficiency among consumers. So it's both protecting the quality of the jobs, but then also reinforcing the actual development of an energy efficiency market and demand for energy efficiency. The first way that we're really looking into doing this is simply by setting standards, high road standards, that ensure the quality of the jobs as well as the quality of the work by requiring that the workers, the workforce that are filling those jobs are trained, compensated, and invested in their job. High road standards have been implemented in several communities actually throughout the United States, and they're often specific to the community in which they're put into place. There is no sort of standard high road language, but they generally include goals around local and targeted hiring practices so that the jobs that are created in energy efficiency are actually increasing the capacity of the local workforce and are extending opportunities to underrepresented and disadvantaged workers. There's also a wage and benefit requirements or incentives so that because we are dealing with a trained workforce and a skilled workforce that is doing this work, that they're adequately compensated for the level of skill that they put into the work, and that they're safe and adequately protected through benefits while they're doing the work. And then finally, that there are workforce training and career development opportunities, which really reinforces the quality of services that the workforce is able to deliver to the consumer market. So, like I said, several communities have set up high road programs, and oftentimes these programs are a combination of sort of minimum requirements that have to be met in order for contractors to work within the energy efficiency program, and then incentives and encouragement so that they are motivated to kind of try to reach higher, and different kinds of support so that the contractors are more able to meet those requirements without sort of running into burdensome practices that cost them time or resources, or that don't really deliver on what the goal of a high road program is. So, two of the major ways that contractors have been supported is by linking the the supply and the demand for labor together. So basically making sure that training programs and contractors are connected to one another so that contractors have a constant source of a skilled workforce, and training programs know what contractors need so that they can incorporate that into their training and get the communities that they're working with to train up in green job skills so that they can be competitive in the market and so that they can be sought after by contractors. So by linking this workforce, you know, the training organizations with the contractors, it really helps to meet workforce and economic development goals because it extends opportunities to local and diverse workforce that the training organizations are working with. It meets programmatic goals by ensuring a high quality of service that is delivered to customers. And then it's also really a huge benefit to contractors because they have access to skilled workers and don't need to spend the same time and resources on recruitment, training, and turnover because the workers that they're pulling out of these programs know what the job is, know how to do the job, and tend to stay on the job. So, so I think, I mean, as part of that, it is just important to ensure that the contractors are communicating what their needs are and that they're actually, both the contractors and training entities are working together to ensure that the training is offering the right sets of skills and that contractors know that those training programs exist and that those workers exist. And then the last thing that we've really looked at to make sure that the quality of jobs are protected is to increase the support that are offered to small, local, and diverse contractors so that those new businesses and small businesses can gain a foothold in the growing energy efficiency sector, which helps them achieve high-road goals. It mitigates barriers to entry by small contractors, and it just grows the contractor base, which has a lot of positive ramifications for the energy efficiency sector because a broader workforce can be employed. Competition is stimulated to deliver high-quality services efficiently, and it grows the wealth of a larger pool of entrepreneurs and actually creates asset development within these communities. So a lot of programs that we've worked with have included support programs such as scholarships for certifications that are necessary to do energy efficiency work, such as BPI and HERS, lines of credit that we talked about so that they can enter into the energy efficiency sector, and then cooperative marketing and pooled benefit plans that allow small contractors to to compete in this sector and to offer good wages and benefits for their employees without having to take on the full cost of that as a small business, but rather pooling their benefits so that they can do that a little bit more without the same amount of burden. And then just general back office support and sort of business liaisons that help them navigate and grow their business. So I'm going to stop there, but that's generally what we've been focusing on in terms of stimulating and protecting the quality of jobs in the energy efficiency sector.
Thanks, Kat. That was a great overview. A lot of good information and suggestions. We have a number of questions coming in, which we'll go ahead and save until the end. We're going to segue now to our local case studies. We're developing programs and implementing some of the policies that Kat highlighted. We're going to start with the City of Berkeley, who will share with us some of the work they're doing with the East Bay Green Corridor. Julie Sinai is the Chief of Staff to Mayor Tom Bates. She joined the staff of Mayor Bates in December 2002 upon his election into office. Julie serves as the Mayor's Policy Advisor on Youth, Education, Health, Social Service Issues, and Intergovernment Relations. With that, I will turn it over to Julie.
Great. Thanks, Kat, or Kate. I'm thrilled to be here, and I really want to thank the Local Government Commission for hosting this. As Chief of Staff to Mayor Bates, who sits on a number of regional bodies, I just want to actually stress that what I'm going to talk about is a regional effort, not so much City of Berkeley. Though if people have questions of anything that we're doing here in Berkeley, I'm always happy to respond. I was asked by the Local Government Commission to look at, to present what the East Bay Green Corridor Partnership is doing in relation to workforce development and training. And so I thought I'd just start by giving a little bit of background and put it in context that, and if you could forward the slide, that would be great. The East Bay Green Corridor Partnership started out at the end of 2007, resulting from a conversation with 4 Bay Area mayors on the East Bay, Mayor Bates in Berkeley, Mayor Dellums in Oakland, Mayor Nora Davis in Emeryville, and Mayor Gail McLaughlin up in Richmond. And the discussion was with the mayors and the Chancellor of the University of California, Berkeley, as well as the former director of the Berkeley National Lab, who is now the current Secretary of Energy, Dr. Stephen Chu. And the concept of what came out of those conversations was really how do we capture the human and intellectual capital that exists in our region, especially around all the research and technology and business development that's happening within the environmental movement and the green technology, with the highly educated and diverse workforce that we have here in the East Bay. And so what resulted from this dialogue was a discussion to create what we called the East Bay Green Corridor Partnership with the 4 city mayors and the 2 institutions of the lab and UC. And the formation was to really look at specifically economic development within the green technology and green energy world. There's a lot of, and I'm sure this happens all across the state, collaboration on all sorts of environmental and climate action issues. The purpose of the corridor was not to create another collaboration and coordination around environmental and climate change, but was really to look at it through the lens of economic development and workforce and education development. And so the niche is pretty specific in that sense. We really wanted to look at how can we capture the spin-outs that were coming from university and the lab in relation to solar technology, electric battery, energy efficiency, building monitoring, and a host of other things. And then to have those businesses land in the East Bay and then generate jobs here in the East Bay and not lose them as close to Silicon Valley or even, to North Carolina, China, or India. So we started out by creating a structure that you can see here on your slide, that the principals, who are the leadership of those institutions, coming together 2 or 3 times a year, and then they would have staff leads for a steering committee that work more together on a month-to-month, day-to-day basis. The focus is really around business development and business retention and attraction and creation and workforce development. And then as sidelines to that, it's the marketing and branding of the East Bay as the Green Corridor. As we moved forward in the dialogue and discussion over the next few months, there was a lot of engagement with our community college district, which provides a lot of the education, the AA degrees and certificates, as well as bridging from underserved communities the opportunities into higher education. And what we're realizing, and the reason we kind of stepped out of our parochial, let's just work on our own city, is the East Bay is a regional economy, and it's a regional workforce, and it's a regional education system. So to be looking at economic development and workforce development solely within our own city creates barriers that aren't really real, legitimate barriers for the communities that we serve. So we wanted to break down those barriers. So we expanded the following year to include 4 more cities in the East Bay, basically covering every city from Richmond north to San Leandro south. including the cities of El Cerrito, Albany, Berkeley, Emeryville, Oakland, Alameda, and San Leandro and Richmond. And added into that, in addition to UC Berkeley, we included Peralta Community College District and the Contra Costa Community College District and the California State University East Bay. So we really created a broad partnership of municipalities with higher ed to really look at the career pathways and business development pathways for success in the green technology in the East Bay. So what we also felt was that we didn't want to just create another organization either at this point, because the Bay Area is rife with organizations. So we wanted to, again, based on our goal of looking through the lens of economic development, we decided that we would partner with East Bay Economic Development Alliance, which is already a public-private partnership for economic development that many of our institutions are already members of, to become basically the fiscal agent and the staffing body for the corridor, because we knew that while the partnership had value in just coming to the table and networking, if we really wanted to implement any work, we needed some structure. So you can see that we developed the Principals Committee, which meets periodically throughout the year, a steering committee that actually meets pretty frequently, every 6 to 8 weeks. And then we have 2 extremely functioning committees, which are the Green Career and Workforce Committee and the Business Development Committee. Our Policy Committee and our Marketing Committee are really working in service of our Workforce and Business Development Committee. And Kat actually talked about it, a number of the strategies that we're applying for in the East Bay Green Corridor in order to support business development and stimulate demand from the marketplace. Our policy work, again, because we're looking at through the lens of economic development and workforce development, is really looking at what policies will support business growth and job creation. So some of the things that our policy folks have put forward to the principals and the corridors taking a lead on is looking at the solar permitting process in the East Bay and actually creating what we hope will be a model for the region, the broader Bay Area region, and maybe even the state. Many people on the call have probably heard that the soft costs in the solar permitting process create an additional $2,500 or so per unit to install, and if we can get those soft costs down, the cost of solar then goes down, and then you can hopefully increase the demand in the marketplace. So what we've done is we've adopted, looking at our 8 cities, how can we develop a consistent and standard permitting process that would decrease the cost of solar installation in the region and therefore increase demand, with the hope then that the impact would then be increased business and increased job creation. Other policies that we're looking at are local hire policies, community workforce agreements, or project labor agreements with our trades. Many of the jobs, one of the challenges in the energy efficiency world is that many of the residential energy efficiency contractors are very small employers. And so trying to create some incentives in which to create a local hire policy. So for example, if a local vendor is going to participate in a city subsidy or a city rebate program, can they sign on to a local hire agreement if they were to bring on any new folks? One of the things we're looking at in the East Bay region is instead of every city having its own local hire policy, which actually then crashes into each other, because again, remember, our vendors and our contractors are actual regional. To be required to hire someone solely in Berkeley for a Berkeley project and then move over to Oakland to do another project and have to hire an Oakland person or vice versa becomes a barrier to actually stability in the market. And so what we're looking at is how can we develop a model for regional local hire goals. So some examples in Richmond and in Berkeley is creating a 3-tiered approach where if you're doing a project labor agreement or a community work agreement, or you're doing a local hire, that you would have a tier of, first goal would be to hire from your local community. The second tier is if you couldn't find qualified people in your local community, you would hire from the East Bay Green Corridor cities. and the third tier would be, a broader catchment area. So we're looking at, again, how can we develop policies that would then support our local workforce development goals. And the other policy that we're really looking at that impacts the energy efficiency world is also, and I think Kat mentioned it, is the financing. And again, there's, through ARA funds, a number of our communities in the East Bay have done rebates for local residential retrofitting. But we're really looking at there's much greater potential for job creation in the commercial and industrial markets, where there's also a higher likelihood that that workforce will be unionized and well paid and well compensated. So we're looking at what kind of partnerships can we create to create financing for upfront costs of energy efficiency retrofits for commercial and industrial buildings in our communities. So those are some of the policies that, again, the policy work that the corridor is doing is to be in service of the business development and the workforce development. So you can move to the next slide. So we've got a complicated strategy in the sense of we have 8 cities which all have a host of dynamic public and private partners. And in order not to get stuck in an unending process, and as well as political battles on who gets to come forward and who doesn't, we've created a workforce committee that is really focused on the entities that have the ability to bring in and facilitate the state and federal dollars. And you can see in the center of this chart we have 3 workforce investment boards, our CSU, our community college district representatives. We have a Green Tech High School collaboration, and our labor folks, and our Economic Development Alliance. What we have is that group is kind of the streamlined, mean and clean group that says, okay, here's the funding that's available, or here's the initiative and opportunity and policy that's available. Let's look at what we have a viability to organize on a regional level, and then look at our community-based partners within a subject matter expertise that they have. So around that center box, you will see curriculum development, where we work specifically with the community college districts, our high schools, and our academic institutions to develop appropriate curriculum that meet standards within the range. But you see the arrow that then goes back and forth to our industrial and business outreach, because what we want to do is ensure that our business and private sector folks are informing that curriculum. And then below you'll see the candidate outreach and recruitment, again, because our populations are fluid and transfer among our jurisdictional boundaries. We want to see, if we're developing an East Bay Green Jobs initiative, how do we coordinate on our outreach and our recruitment and our intake. And then lastly, one of the areas that we've had a very strong focus on is around Green Tech High Schools. The state, as many of you might be aware, has a Community Partnership Academy funds for Green Tech High Schools. And what we did is, in the East Bay Green Corridor Partnership jurisdictions of 8 cities, we have identified 9 high schools that are funded with career academies that are focused on green tech. What we find in the high school world, and it's not just in green tech, it's really in all academic academies, or all career academies, is that the teachers have, one release period, and that they're supposed to be developing all sorts of partnerships and industry outreach and curriculum development within their, little one period of release time. What we've decided is to bring together, use the force of the Green Corridor Partnership, where we've got industry at the table with the workforce investment boards, with the community colleges and higher ed, to basically help leverage those outside partnerships for the high schools so that they can focus on incorporating the information necessary to create the curriculums that create pathways for the students that are in their high school, and that we work to develop a very clear step between high schools and community college and 4-year institutions, as well as into the trades and apprenticeship programs. So again, so that the high schools don't have to go beat down the door of every organization, every solar company. We are in the process of trying to streamline those relationships to make them more effective within the educational institutions. And the hope is most of those high schools have a focus around renewables, energy efficiency, and environmental science. So what we really want is that the students and the teachers really understand what are the basic academic careers what is the educational needs that they have to get into those jobs for energy management, contractors, etc. The last thing, or then going to the next slide, the focus of our work has really been to create pathways. Can you flip this slide? Is to create a pathway, and this is a little bit complicated slide to look at, but I wanted to show it to people anyway. This is a education pathway that we created for solar installation and energy and building efficiency a couple of years ago. And what we wanted to do is realize that we're looking at multiple populations when we're looking at the pathways. While we were extremely successful in securing a lot of ARA funds for reaching some of our most at-risk population in the East Bay, we also know from the economy that a lot of the people who are entering into energy efficiency right now are actually incumbent workers or people who are currently in the workforce who are needing to develop new skills because they're moving from construction contracting into energy efficiency. And so what we created was a pathway with multiple entry points. In the lower part is really where we're doing outreach and recruitment into our most at-risk populations and creating pre-bridge programs so that they can even access the training programs or the community college programs that exist. One of the biggest gaps we identified in the East Bay was that many of our at-risk populations don't have basic math and English to even get into the training programs. And so we were able to secure close to $1 million East Bay Green Job Corps grant where we sent 100 people through 6 different cohorts of pre-bridge literacy and math programs with the main goal of getting them into further education and training. We also worked with folks like Rising Sun and other organizations to look at what their energy efficiency training programs are, to also look at incumbent workers or workers who are needing to re-hone on their skills. So they've created a very dynamic program called the Green Energy Technology Academy or program that they embed into some of the building trades pre-apprenticeship programs. So they've created an additional 6-week course that goes on top of a building and constructions training course that goes on top of a layered solar training course and an energy efficiency course. So the goal is really to help folks who get into those really entry-level positions continue to see a vision and a future and a step ladder up through the career pathways. One of the challenges that we have is that while we felt with all of the ARA funds that were coming through that there would be a lot of jobs on the other end, and the frank reality was that there aren't. And again, because a lot of the work around here was also done through the residential markets, it was a lot of people really just kind of keeping on their jobs versus a lot of creation of new jobs. Our hire rates have been fairly successful because the training programs are working in communities where there's public sector work. And so Richmond Build and Cypress Mandela and folks have been able to do some fairly successful placement work also because they've been able to feed their graduates into publicly funded work, which has been the saving grace. The private market has not expanded to the potential that we were all hoping for, and I think we agree with Green for All and CAT that there's an emerging economy. The unfortunate thing is it's not here yet. So we're continuing to hone in on our training to try to figure out how to really make sure the placements are secure. We also, just as a side note, but I won't get into it because it's not the focus of the discussion, but we did diversify our training pathways to look at green diesel and green auto, because we felt like in the East Bay we couldn't focus solely on building performance and solar because that economy just it wasn't growing in the immediate sense. You can go to the next slide. So the priorities of our Workforce Development Regional Committee is really to develop a coordinated system for industry outreach and employment and job placement. There's a significant gap of having industry at the table. And so we've been looking at strategies to either create some kind of intermediary or to infuse some additional resources into East Bay Economic Development Alliance to kind of create that bridge between the education and training worlds and the industry worlds. We're also looking at expanding, like I said, into alternative transportation industries. We are really working to strengthen the relationship with the building trades and our educational institutions. There are parallel training programs that are going on that really need to be better coordinated and leveraged. Our high school program is fragile because of the state budget. We never know as the cuts to education are being levied along our local communities of what teachers we're going to keep and what ones we're going to lose. And whether the funding for the tech academies are going to be able to continue. But we are working to institutionalize the relationships between the schools and the community college districts and, again, the industry. And lastly, we're really looking at also how can we provide advanced training for incumbent workers or for people who are in the workforce who are looking to improve and expand their skills in order to advance up the career ladder. Some accomplishments in the next slide, we were able to, actually it's a little outdated, we raised about $5 million in ARA funds. We've received 3 federal earmarks from our local congressional delegation. And we've hosted 2 very dynamic high school career exploration fairs that really expose the green collar, green tech jobs to our high school students. The goal with a lot of our workforce development is to really ensure that that nobody is left out in the emerging economy of green tech and green energy. So I think I'll stop there and answer questions afterwards as people might have them, but that's an example of how we're looking at it from a broader regional perspective.
Thanks, Julie. That was a great presentation. Good example of some of the things that can be done when you're able to work at the regional level and some of the key challenges that should be considered as well. Next, we're going to hear from the City of Chula Vista about the work they're doing both at the local level and then also at the regional level as well. So I will turn it over to Brendan Reed, who is with the City of Chula Vista. He's the Environmental Resource Manager and is responsible for the development of environmental programs and policies dealing with energy management, water conservation, and global climate change.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having the City of Chula Vista participate today. I've myself learned a lot from the first 2 speakers, so hopefully I can at least share some insights into how the City of Chula Vista is trying to really create a local green economy. As you've sort of already heard, we're at our infancy in some respects, so we're certainly learning as we go along, and we really hope to move forward even more broadly in the future, working with some of our regional partners. So again, my name is Brendan Reed. I'm with the City of Chula Vista. Today I'm going to mainly focus on how we're leveraging our energy policies and programs to, again, grow a local green economy. But we're really using the same strategy and doing many of the same approaches in all of our sustainability initiatives. For example, just real quick, we have our heavy-duty vehicles in our fleet are running on biodiesel, and as part of getting the biodiesel from a local supplier, we've worked it out where that supplier is actually providing free pickup of restaurant waste oil to our local restaurants. So hopefully it's helping our restaurants reduce some of their costs to dispose of those materials, and in the end it's obviously waste products being turned into a valuable resource. So, you know, I'm not an economist by any means, so I think most of our approaches are just centered around the basic tenets of supply and demand. And in general, environmental sustainability and economic sustainability are really linked in our community. They're really linked by our elected officials. An example is actually our environmental director for the last 10+ years. He actually was just promoted to our economic director. Next slide, please. So just what I'm going to talk about in the next 15 minutes, give you a little bit of background about who Chula Vista is and a little bit about our kind of energy situation, because that is really the context of all of our policies and programs. That's the driver. Well, again, of course, talk about how our environmental initiatives support economic development. And we're just going to talk about 3 examples looking at our own municipal retrofits on our own facilities, how we're leveraging our EECBG or block grant money through a community appliance rebate program, and then how we're trying to support our local economy through a community savings initiative centered around Energy Upgrade California. And then I'll finish off with just talking about 2 things that we're currently working on that, again, will support our local green economy. The next slide, please. So Chula Vista, if you don't know, is the 2nd largest city in San Diego County. We're about 7 miles north of the U.S.-Mexican border. We have about 240,000 residents, and we're about an area of 50 square miles. The city has a really diverse population, both ethnically and socioeconomically. And so when we are designing programs, we really have to take that into consideration that we're serving our entire community in all sectors. And we're kind of diverse just landscape-wise. You know, we have a bayfront, we have 2 riparian areas, we have sort of more of a hill or mountainous area. So it's a great microcosm, I think, for a community. One of the things that we're constantly what constantly is in the front of our mind is that we're a growing community still. One of my main jobs is dealing with, of course, climate change, creating climate action plans, and trying to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. But that's really hard when over the next 30 to 50 years we expect another 85,000 residents and another 27,000 new homes to be built. And the majority of that is on greenfield. So it makes my job exciting, to say the least. Next slide, please. So one of the main factors of our energy policy, and again, this really creates the foundation for how we move forward in a green economy, is we have a lot of pretty old local energy infrastructure. We have a baseload power plant that was just decommissioned about 6 months ago. We have a peaker plant. We have lots of substations. We have 50 miles of high voltage transmission line. So it's very much on it's in the eye of our community members. And really with that as a backdrop, that's caused our city to create a number of policies and programs from an energy strategic plan that's community-wide to one specifically on municipal buildings. And then we've recently adopted a climate adaptation plan, which includes energy-related policies from cool roof, cool paving, and some shade tree work. Next slide, please. And then when we look at our own municipal energy statistics, so this is energy at our own facilities, we use about 20 million kWh a year and 1 million therms, and that equates to about $6 million annually in utility costs. That is about 2% of our annual city budget, and the story I think that staff continuously tells our elected officials and of course our constituents is that we can think of a lot of better ways to spend $6 million out of our general fund than paying a utility bill. So that is really, again, a driver is we'd rather use our money to support local public safety, support our libraries and recreation centers, and those are the ones that really have been most hit over the last couple of years because of budget woes. The next slide. So one of the biggest things about us is, of course, making sure our energy-related dollars, those investments are done locally. There was a Michigan study that looked at, for every dollar spent locally, how much remains in the community versus if you spend that dollar on a out-of-town business. And it's basically 58% more of that dollar stays local if you spend it at a local business. Of course, that sort of permeates through or percolates through the community from property and sales tax, which in the end supports city services and employees. It supports sort of auxiliary businesses, so business-to-business transactions, local suppliers, local support services. But it can also have even indirect benefits through things like community donations. The next slide, please. So our first example of how we've done this, how we're trying to support our local green economy through our energy projects, is looking at our own municipal retrofits. Over the last 5 years, we've spent, or in the process of spending, about $10 million on upgrading our city facilities with energy efficiency and distributed generation, mainly solar photovoltaic systems. That $10 million is coming from a variety of sources, including our EECBG or block grants, our on-bill financing provided by SDG&E, CEC loans, and we are currently in the process of issuing qualified energy conservation bonds. So we're using all those funding sources to support retrofitting our own facilities. An example of a project where we really highlighted the local purchasing and hiring components was our solar photovoltaic project. This is $3.2 million project gross costs. It's installing an aggregate 500 kilowatts of solar PV at 11 municipal sites. So what we did is when we sent out the RFP for this, in addition to the normal RFP language about contractor experience, contractor training, liability insurance, all those sort of standard contract language, we included some additional criteria or questions. This included asking them about how they would support local hiring and how they would support local purchasing. And then when, of course, we got our bid responses in, as part of the interviewing and the review process for those bids and ultimately the selection of a contractor, those were additional factors that we considered. Of course, price, warranty, again, all the standard contracting conditions were also considered. But this was really, I'd say, the thing that made us select the winning contractor. I mean, this was the thing that really separated them apart from the other ones. So some of the things that they committed to and have since done is that they've opened a local office for their company. And this is important because this allows the point of sales for the construction to be registered in our city. So that's, again, a majority of that $3.2 million is product PV panels and auxiliary equipment. So that's being bought locally then. They have hired local subcontractors, and even for themselves, they are a union shop, and they're hiring Chula Vistans who are union to work on our projects. So they've worked with our local IDEW training facility on that. Finally, they've worked with our local community college, Southwestern Community College, to help that college create basically a green technology curriculum, and that is in the final stages of being developed and launched. One of the ways on the sort of project management side of that we've been tracking at is that we've actually made our contractor list in a spreadsheet all of the different materials and supplies needed in this project. This is from porta potties to temporary construction fencing to, again, the big items like PV panels, inverters, etc. And for each one of those items, our contractor had to basically research a local vendor that could supply those and give a cost for that. And then if there was a better cost from another out of Chula Vista vendor, they also had that. So we were able to kind of see what the cost difference was. But again, 99% of the time, they were able to find a comparable or even better price with a local vendor. The second example of our municipal retrofit project is our LED streetlights, which is currently going on. This was a $2.2 million project where we're retrofitting about 4,600 high-pressure sodium fixtures with, of course, energy-saving LEDs. Again, in our RFP process, we put in criteria or questions related to local hiring and purchasing. The successful contractor through that bid process, again, one of the biggest factors for choosing them, all else being equal, was that they had the most robust local hiring and purchasing components. Now, one thing that we have learned, and sometimes the hard way, is how we frame that in our RFPs. When we did something similar to this a few years ago related to alternative fuels, actually, we asked the question or framed the RFP to say something like, tell us how much more it will be to, do local hiring and local purchasing. And not surprising, every contractor came back saying it would cost more to do those things. So again, be very careful how you present this sort of local focus in your RFPs so that it doesn't sort of automatically trigger the contractor to put a premium on that, because as we've discovered, it really doesn't need to do that. So in addition to looking at these projects, which focus on lowering municipal operating costs, we're also obviously trying to look in the community. So if you go to the next slide. So this is focused on our appliance rebate program. As part of our block grants, we created our Home Upgrade Carbon Downgrade program, which provides local rebates and incentives for energy efficiency upgrades. This particular program or component of the program is where we partnered actually with the major appliance retailers in our community. And they're listed on the screen, and it represents 7 stores, and pretty much everyone besides one local company participated. So how we did is we set it up as a point-of-sale rebate so that our local residents who are interested in receiving rebates up to $200 for clothes washers, refrigerators, and so forth, they would actually have to go to our local appliance store and purchase it there. And so through that, we've distributed about $100,000 in local rebates. That's been leveraged with about $350,000 in other rebates, from California Cash for Appliances to the local utility. And as a result, we've generated about $1.3 million in local sales. Some sort of indirect benefits from this project, we found that our local appliance stores, and they've told us this, that they now stock more higher efficiency appliances as a result. We were actually, as part of our project, our program, we're requiring these appliances to be even more energy efficient than our local investor-owned utility. So our project actually helped kind of tip the balance, where now our local retailers are stocking more of the high efficiency products. And we also got some feedback from our participating stores that they felt that their employees are now much more knowledgeable about the rebates. We actually have staff assigned to every store, and they go every week to make sure that all of the stickers on the appliances are accurate. They answer any questions that the staff or employees at the store might have. And so really we're trying to create local demand and local supply out of this, and it seems like it's working on that front. Next slide, please. So the other example is a project called the Community Savings Initiative, and this is actually in partnership with the California Center for Sustainable Energy. They're actually the leads on this project. And the Community Savings Initiative is focused on trying to create a new program delivery method for Energy Upgrade California. As one of the previous speakers mentioned, the Public Utilities Commission by 2020 hopes that all 13 million residential units in California are upgraded, are retrofitted to an average 40% more energy efficient than, I think, 2008 levels. So if you do the math in our community with the number of existing homes we have, that's almost $1 billion worth of energy improvements focused on existing homes. So our Community Savings Initiative, we're working to aggregate neighbors so that they can go out and get a better price and have better sort of quality workmanship warranties for Energy Upgrade California type improvements on their homes. So we actually have a pilot area that the first one is focused on just 600 homes, and we helped neighborhood leaders from that area write and then distribute a request for proposals for contractors who could come in and give these homeowners under the Energy Upgrade California program the best deal, as well as the best warranty, et cetera. And through that RFP process with the neighborhood leaders, they again put in some local purchasing, local hiring preferences. They ended up selecting 2 contractors as their preferred contractors, and both of those had links to local retailers. One had a link to Costco, and they also had links to hiring local workers out of the WAP program, the Weatherization Assistance Program. Next slide, please. So where the City of Chula Vista is going from here is that we definitely have created a lot of sort of excitement about this type of policy with our elected officials. And so now the city is actually trying to create a more formal, more broader local buying policy or local purchase preference citywide in all of our operations. And annually we spend about $58 million on supplies and services. And then another about $20 million on capital improvement projects annually. So we're in the process right now of writing a sort of municipal-wide local purchasing preference policy. One thing we are doing as part of that, though, we're trying to put in there a preference for local clean businesses. The city actually has a clean business program where businesses that are taking really proactive steps to becoming more sustainable, which we verify, that they would actually be called out in the policy, and we hope that this would be a benefit for those businesses to participate in the Clean Business Program and, of course, in the end, improve their bottom line. And the other item that we're working on currently that has a bit of a local economy spin, a local green economy spin, is we recently learned the hard way about that our general plan really didn't have clear and strong enough language concerning where electric generating facilities could go. So this is anything from a peaker plant to a baseload power plant or even backup emergency generators. So we're currently working on a policy right now that more explicitly defines where they can go. And as part of that, we are requiring those facilities to offset their greenhouse gas emissions 100% and to do that locally through supporting local green initiatives, mainly energy efficiency, renewable energy projects. So this could be really a funding source that we can funnel back into supporting a local green economy. And that's the end of my presentation, and I look forward to our discussion at the end.
Thanks, Brendan. I'm always so impressed with the amazing work you're doing down there in Chula Vista. So last but certainly not least, we will turn it over to the Sierras. Greg Jones is Sierra Business Council's Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, and oversees SBC's energy programs. Greg is a former CFO of a startup wind turbine manufacturing company and the founding executive director of the Sierra Green Building Association. With that, I will turn it over to Greg.
Great, thanks so much, Kate. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to talk today about the Sierra Business Council's Energy and Climate Leadership Program. And thanks again, Kate and the LGC for organizing these webinars. Next slide, please. We'll start into first a little background about the Sierra Business Council. We're a 501c3 business-based organization. Our mission is all about social entrepreneurship in applying the principles of business to solving the most difficult social, environmental, and economic problems within our region. We're based in Truckee, California, but cover the entire Sierra Nevada. Our work focuses on 4 areas: community development, leadership development, sustainable business practices, and large landscape conservation. As part of our portfolio, we have more than 25 projects that are designed to model sustainability on the ground. We manage a local government partnership called the Sierra Nevada Energy Watch, a green communities program conducting greenhouse gas inventories leading up to climate action plans in 16 jurisdictions throughout the Sierra, and an innovator pilot project, which we'll talk about today. Next slide, please. Our entire portfolio of projects is really designed to improve the economy of the Sierra Nevada region by linking place-based resource restoration and management to economic development opportunities, and modeling those behaviors as the next engine of prosperity. One of the key barriers to implementing this vision is leadership, capable of visioning, identifying, designing, developing, and managing these projects within the region. Next slide, please. In understanding this dynamic, we began a program in 1996 to train Sierra Nevada leaders to focus on strategic, collaborative processes, communications, and project management skills. Since 1996, we've graduated more than 400 participants in the program, and they've led more than 100 projects in the region, ranging from landscape conservation to reducing teen pregnancy to promotion of the arts, and almost everything in between. One key objective of our leadership training has been amplifying our impact in the region, realizing that in a fragmented, dispersed region, locally led efforts would have to be the most likelihood of success. Next slide. This year, we restructured our leadership development program to focus on one issue: leveraging energy savings and climate adaptation to create jobs throughout the Sierra Nevada. We used an open application process to recruit teams of between 3 to 7 people from rural Sierra communities, and applicants were required to come to the table with 1, a project they wished to advance within their community, 2, a team that represented a diversity of their community, and 3, a rough work plan demonstrating that their project was viable. Teams had to commit to attend the entire 5-day course and 2-day follow-up course over a 12-month period, focused on technical assistance conducted in their community and an ongoing project development and implementation work. To fund the effort, we submitted and were awarded an innovator pilot project by our regional IPP manager, PG&E. We then aggregated additional funding around the IPP investment from a variety of other sponsors, including a private foundation, a trade union, and another state agency, the Employment Training Panel of the Employment Development Department. The total cost of the institute is ongoing, but we're anticipating a cost of approximately $200,000 in expenses. The institute has several measurable outcomes and objectives. The first objective is to increase the leadership capacity of local communities. If the purpose of leadership is to exert social influence to achieve common tasks, rural regions suffer from a lack of leadership due to isolation, limited financial resources, a dearth of innovation-based industries, and lack of institutions of higher education. We are attempting to overcome those barriers by giving emergent leaders access to support systems that connect them together to these resources. We are, in essence, creating a distributed network leadership model within the region. The second objective is to encourage communities to identify common tasks or projects and assist them with designing pragmatic and implementable projects with measurable outcomes. The idea is to create a portfolio of projects that we can then market within the region that can meet investor expectations and/or California Energy Efficiency Strategic Plan objectives. The third objective is to build the relationship between the individual community team members and SBC staff to act as a cohort to implement the projects on the ground. Our fourth objective of the program is to ensure that each project work plan has a set of direct, measurable goals that could quantify energy savings or greenhouse gas emission reductions, establishing the link between state policy objectives and economic development objectives within the region. And finally, we were seeking to ensure that all participants could communicate about the value created by their projects from a triple bottom line perspective. That is, they could clearly articulate not just environmental benefits, but also social and economic benefits in a way that would increase social readiness for climate change adaptation and mitigation, thus overcoming cultural barriers to implementing state policies. Next slide, please. The curriculum was developed for the curriculum that we developed for the project had 5 different components. The first component was leadership, which included developing a common understanding of the conditions in the region, leadership styles through testing and role-playing, leadership theories in order to get people to understand both their own style and the style of the people in the teams and within the community, and mapping the leadership network of their team and the community. The second was competencies, which includes climate and energy communications with a focus on diffusing conflict over these issues, how to work effectively in groups, running effective outcome-oriented meetings, and simple conflict resolution techniques. The third was energy and climate, which included a primer on basic climate science, understanding the essentials of energy use and supply, and the state policy framework, including everything from Title 24 up to AB 32. Project development was the meat of the whole week, focusing on the developing implementable projects with specific work plans that identify goals, objectives, tasks, timelines, staffing, roles and responsibilities, budgets, communication plans, and fundraising or financing objectives, as well as performance metrics. And then presentation, finally. Each team was responsible to prepare for and present their project to the group as though they were presenting to an investor, with 10 minutes to make their case. Next slide, please. Next, we have a series of outcomes. The measure of any program is whether or not it meets its objectives. And on our program, quite honestly, the jury is still out. We do have some preliminary results, though. We were successful in recruiting 9 teams totaling 60 people to our 5-day course. The bonding experience and the shared training has created remarkably tight teams, every one of whom has continued to work and meet their work plan objectives since the course was conducted in June. Each team has an SBC liaison to help access additional resources. The projects developed to date include the establishment of a job training center at the former North Fork and Auberry Mill sites, focusing on creating 4 or more energy conservation-based small businesses, a streetlight retrofit project in Murphy's, California, establishing a green internship program and energy efficiency pilot program at the Sierra College in Rocklin, California, developing a first ever oak woodland carbon sequestration project to be certified under the Climate Action Registry, demonstrating a market-based mechanism on the least protected habitat type in California, starting a home energy, water, and radon retrofit program in El Dorado County, implementing the town of Loomis's Green Ribbon Task Force, and implementing a community-wide green waste composting project in Plumas County. Each project has specific kilowatt-hour and greenhouse gas goals and specific social and economic metrics built into the work plan, which will give us the ability to measure the results. Preliminary results indicate to us that by the end of next year, we're going to be able to have a climate and energy leadership module that will be able to articulate specific kilowatt-hour and greenhouse gas reductions per dollar invested in project development and a system to track community co-benefits attributable to the initial investment. And that next slide should wrap up my presentation. Thank you for your time, and I'll wait for questions.
Great, thanks, Greg. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenny in our office, who is going to read out some of the questions that have come in throughout the webinar. And just a quick reminder, if you have questions for any of our panelists, go ahead and type those in now, and we will get to them in the order they came in.
Okay, we have a couple of great questions. So the first question is for Kat, and one attendee wanted to know what sources you used for the statistics that you provided.
That's a great question, and I actually want to apologize for not including those sources in my presentation. I used the Next 10 report that recently came out, I believe, in March of this year, the most recent Brookings report on the California economy, the California Economic EDG report, and two others coming out of UC Berkeley, the Don Weil, the Labor Center report on workforce development needs in the energy efficiency sector, and the the Center for Community Innovation report on innovation in the green economy in California. So I can send those resources to Jenny, and she can distribute to this group if that makes sense.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
And then we have another question for you, Kat. You mentioned a 160,000 job projection with a split between indirect jobs and then another type of job. And what was the other part of the split of these projected jobs?
So it's split between indirect jobs that are created through the demand for energy efficiency resources, and that's where the manufacturing of energy efficiency products falls. And then induced jobs, which are basically jobs that are coming from a result of people employed in the energy efficiency sector spending the wages that they're earning in those jobs in different sectors around the economy. So that's known typically as the multiplier effect, where employing people actually encourages the rest of the economy because those people are then spending their money on goods and services in the economy. So those are the induced jobs that are coming out of the energy efficiency economy and are less related to green sectors.
Thank you. And then one last question for you, Kat. What do you mean by increasing the inclusivity of the market? Is it that you mean participation in energy efficiency in the energy efficiency market by financial assistance to help with upfront payments for retrofits?
Sort of. So inclusivity is more getting towards making sure that as much of the market as possible can access energy efficiency retrofits. So right now, because there is a lack of attractive financing options, many people who might be interested in energy efficiency are not able, but are unable to pay for the upfront cost of those retrofits, don't have access to investing in those retrofits. And because of the sort of credit situation that is prevalent in our economy today, where financial institutions are really reluctant to invest in new products and take on very much risk at all, the underwriting criteria for energy efficiency products has been pretty rigid, and that limits a really quite a significant number of homeowners from having access to those finance products. So it's estimated that nationally about 41% of the homeowner market is low and moderate income with FICO scores of less than 600 and debt-to-equity ratios of less than a 1-to-1 debt-to-equity ratio. And those are the sort of underwriting criteria that we're seeing in a lot of finance products, which basically cuts the potential demand for the energy efficiency market in half. So by working to increase the inclusivity of financial products, we can really significantly increase the amount of the market that is demanding or investing in energy efficiency.
Okay, thank you, Kat. Now we have a question for Julie. Have the youth workers also been trained to sell energy efficiency? The participant found that a small business energy efficiency program didn't work very well until they had a third-party contractor go to small businesses, work deals, and explain what the benefits are. Julie?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. There's a couple of programs that train the youth in doing outreach to households. They go door to door and work with local residents to explain energy efficiency concepts and to do kind of some of the low-hanging fruit around weatherization and light bulb switching out and the like. And so they do kind of the entry-level introduction into energy efficiency into the home, whether they're renters or homeowners. I don't believe that any of the training programs, and this is something that we've actually wanted to look at, have actually provided marketing and sales training because that's an area where we've actually talked to some of our providers within the solar industry of looking at what % of their workforce are actually installers versus back office folks. Our local community college that has a niche around business and marketing has been looking at how to kind of green their marketing programs.
The next question we have is for Brendan. How do you determine a clean business? What is the criteria? Is there a cost? Who ultimately determines which businesses comply?
Sure. One of the reasons I should first say is that we even created this Clean Business program is that in the city of Chula Vista, we really have 3 different divisions. And as you know, 2 years ago, we were 3 different departments that are doing environmental related things. So we have our stormwater, we have our solid waste and recycling folks, and then we have sort of my section that does energy, water conservation, and sort of general climate change stuff. So we created the Clean Business program to actually create like a one-stop shop for all of our services. It is a free program for businesses. Any business that is interested has to complete a checklist, which really is just a list of sort of best practices in those three main areas, so solid waste, pollution prevention, energy, and water. And if they kind of get a minimum score, so if they have a minimum number of checks, they can participate. Once they've completed their checklist, a city staff member from one of the sections will go out and just verify that it's happening, and then they become a clean business for a 3-year period. Also, for businesses that do participate, the city does provide free advertising and marketing, so we'll take out newspaper ads recognizing the businesses. They're, of course, recognized in front of our city council, on our auto park sign, which is, a digital colored display sign off the freeway. We advertise our clean businesses. We're right now working on street light banners for our participating clean businesses, recognizing their efforts.
Great, thank you, Brendan. And then another question we have for you: how was the city sponsored rebate program through the local retailers funded?
Sure. Our appliance rebate program, and then we also have a matching incentive for Energy Upgrade California. They are funded through our EECBG, our Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Fund. So, and those, of course, came out of the federal stimulus package.
Perfect. And then the last question we have for you is there a description available of the methodology the City of Chula Vista used to determine the dollar amount necessary to meet the goal of energy consumption in existing homes that will be reduced by 20% by 2020?
Oh, I think that was a question in response to sort of that quick statistic that I threw out there. So what I just did is, if the PUC goal is basically all existing residential homes by 2020, we have about 76,000 dwelling units. And what we're seeing actually through our Energy Upgrade California projects is that the average gross costs for the projects is around $10,000. And then the net cost after all the incentives is around $5,000. So I just took, obviously, $10,000 times all of the number of dwelling units, and it's just shy of $1 billion. So I think that's what that question is referencing. And I apologize for sloppy math.
Thank you, Brendan. Does anyone have any other questions for any of the speakers? If so, it would be great if you could type them in.
And in the meantime, I'll go ahead and unmute all of the speakers to see if you all have any final comments, or if any of you want to jump in to add to some of the questions that have already been answered. Any last remarks? Okay, well, I want to thank all our speakers for sharing with us today, and thanks to all of you who tuned in to the webinar. I hope you found it useful. Again, please take a few minutes to fill out the survey. As I mentioned, your input will help us to offer events that cover the topics you're most interested in. And don't forget to take advantage of the AICP credit offered for participating today. Thanks, and that concludes our webinar.
Thanks, Kate.